What is going on, everyone? This is Ninja Geek here, and Modern Warfare 2 is finally backwards compatible on the Xbox One. So you will be seeing this gameplay here throughout the entirety of this video, as well as I do have it on PC, and I'm a terrible PC player, by the way, so don't expect much in terms of quality from the PC gameplay if I do decide to include it in this video. Not entirely sure, but this video is basically just a discussion video on history because I do like a lot of history, and I like a lot of the things that the developers have included throughout the Call of Duty series as far as campaign ideas go, and things that they put in the multiplayer and Spec Ops and all that type of stuff. It's very interesting to read up on it and learn about it and go along with it as far as every Call of Duty game is released. But it's also interesting to go back and kind of see what the communities were like back then and what things were being done into these games that could have or definitely would have changed history. And we don't know if for the better or for the worse, but we can speculate that, and I think that's pretty much just what this video is. It's entirely a discussion. There is no definite answer here, but basically, in other words, if you don't know already, which most people do, but I will summarize what had happened during Infinity Ward's time during Modern Warfare 2 during 2009 and 2010. They basically had a big falling out with Activision because some of the employees were kind of in talks with EA, and Activision found out, and a bunch of employees got fired, or in other words, left, because other employees got fired. And they basically formed Respawn Entertainment, which makes Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. So anyways, back to Infinity Ward, like at least half of the studio left. And therefore there wasn't a lot of support for Modern Warfare 2. And therefore Robert Bowling's infamous patch that did not go through. And what that patch entailed, which I will leave a link in the description below to Nero's video on what this patch entailed specifically, but overall this patch was going to fix one-man army and the noob tube spam, and the way noob tubes acted. It was going to fix boosting and tac inserts in free-for-all. It was going to fix a lot of glitches and attachment glitches and so on and so forth. It was a huge patch that was set to come out for Modern Warfare 2 sometime during 2010, and it just never came out at all. And now we look back, and because Modern Warfare 2 is backwards compatible, a lot of people are able to actually play it now. People that have never played Modern Warfare 2 before, and they can now experience what it was like back in its prime, because the game never got any updates. Well, besides one that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. But Modern Warfare 2 was never supported, and it's still one of the most popular games, and that just leaves to question, what if the patch did go through? Now, there are two scenarios in this, so I'll break it down. What if the patch went through back in 2010? So let's say there was no falling out with Activision, and there was no going to EA to talk about different things, or so on and so forth, and Infinity Ward was still Infinity Ward, and they were still supporting and developing their game. And by the way, the whole reason why some of the employees actually went to talk to EA is because Activision was trying to claim property over the Call of Duty title, and Infinity Ward wanted it to really be their own IP instead of having it really under Activision's name, in other words. And I think that that's really what made some of the employees want to talk with EA, and because they were doing certain things, and Activision ended up finding out, and so on and so forth. But what if that patch ended up going through? Well, obviously the game would be very different to this day. Infinity Ward themselves would be very different because they would have Modern Warfare 3 definitely would have happened, in my opinion, and it definitely would have been different than how it turned out today. But Modern Warfare 2 would have continued to get support and updates, not just this patch, but beyond that and past that. So it's very interesting to think about because, we're sitting here in 2018 and we don't have any of that. We just have the Modern Warfare 2 that was left for us. And in a way, I think that the game itself would be better with the patch, of course, and I think that everybody would agree here. But in a way, it's weird to think about this like this, but I just have to say it. I think that Modern Warfare 2 is as popular and powerful as it is, and rememberable and nostalgic, in other words, I think that people would like to call it, because it was such an important time, or a popular time in Call of Duty's history when the game was rising, and yeah, it was frustrating in the game as well to not have the noob tubes, or, you know, whatever it was in the game that made it so broken, or the glitches and all that, and you can go on, but it was, either way, it was such a powerful time that I personally think in history, it just makes it so iconic, and the word that I would like to say is just memorable, and I guess what's the word that I'm looking for to describe this? It's a weird feeling, because nowadays, I guess we could look at the Call of Duty games and, you know, we could say whether we like a game or not, but I think that the reason why Modern Warfare 2 was as powerful as it was is because it was such an important piece of history. And to me, I like all of this stuff, and I find it very interesting that, you know, of what did happen. You know, we can't change that, and it's so interesting that, you know, this is how Modern Warfare 2 turned out. And I think that because of that reason, and the way that Infinity Ward, we know that they have access to essentially changing the game right now, because we've seen them go back, and I believe in Modern Warfare 3, they went back to change some picture on the wall in Favela. And, you know, people were disappointed and angry at the same time because they could have changed and updated that patch into Modern Warfare 2 when they were doing that stuff. And I believe that happened during Modern Warfare 3. But they never did. And they could to this day, but I don't honestly think they will. And personally, for me, I think that if they make a Modern Warfare 2 remastered, they should definitely implement this patch because it's a brand new game. But I think that what makes this game different than a lot of the other Call of Duty games, and so popular, in other words, is because of the way history played out and the reasoning behind the game. You know, the reason why the noob tubes weren't fixed was because of the big falling out with Activision. And, you know, a lot of people would probably disagree with me here and say, well, it doesn't really matter, or they don't really care. But I think that it's very popular because you go back nowadays, now, especially with it on Xbox One, and you play this game that came out pretty much almost, I think, 10 years ago almost, and you just play this game, and you're thinking to yourself, you know, wow, like, this is how it was back then, and they just didn't update it because of this, and you're looking at all of the historical pieces, I mean, besides the historical things that are in the setting of the game, but you're looking at all of the things that were in the game, and that were never fixed, and I just look at that like as an amazing piece of history, whereas nowadays in Call of Duty, we don't really have that sort of history. You know, the developers are all together, but we can look at Modern Warfare 2 and say, you know, this game was just excellent because they really tried, but they didn't, and I don't know, I just find it really interesting how Modern Warfare 2 turned out, that I think it really, just a little piece inside of everyone kind of forgets about that and just thinks, you know, oh, the game needs to be fixed. Or some people even wonder, you know, why is Modern Warfare 2 so popular? You know, the game, the multiplayer, the noob tubes are crazy, the gameplay is like trash, you know, the campaign is good, but the multiplayer, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, there are those people. And I think that the reason why this game was so popular is just the history behind making the game. Of course, it had a great setting and great gameplay in certain aspects, and even though it was broken, I think that the history behind the making of the game is unlike any other Call of Duty we've ever seen before, that it just kind of makes people excited when they want to play this game and figure out, you know, why this wasn't fixed, or why this was a glitch, or interesting things like that. Like certain, I forgot exactly what pistol it was, but there's a pistol in the game right now, and I believe it's still that way because Robert Bowling's patch never went through, that with a silencer, it still appears as a red dot on the minimap, and I think to this day, it's still like that because the patch never went through, and that's just an interesting piece of history right there. You know, we don't really see that nowadays with Call of Duty, so I kind of wanted to spark this discussion to see what you think down below. Do you not really care about it? You just care about the things that are in the games themselves and what make them great, or do you really enjoy the history behind it like myself and see the games, how they were made and why they have such this charm to the games, Nowadays, people are saying essentially, like, I find a lot of people online talking about how Black Ops 4 in the beta was great, and other people like myself didn't entirely enjoy it all that much. Now, it was great at the beginning, but I don't know. It just doesn't have that charm, and some people prefer to have great balance in games and the gameplay itself, but other people just prefer the history and the charm and the making of a great game, and I don't know. There's just so many different communities and so many different discussions to be had, but I think I'm going to end it off right there. You can let me know your thoughts down below. I will see you on the next one. Also, sorry for the lack of uploads as well. I just started back at college, so I'm getting used to that. I also work, so it's kind of hard to kind of put this all into a schedule, but here I am making this video, and hopefully I can get it uploaded soon. But that's it for it anyways. I'll see you on the next one. This is Ninja Geek. I'm out. And peace.